Hey, midterms, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite animes, and today I'm going to be talking about an anime that is so freaking good. It's so absolutely bone-crushingly amazing, and somehow no one's talking about this anime, or at least only a small group of people are talking about this anime. Second of all, this is not a wide appeal anime. A lot of people are gonna watch it and are going to hate it for its art style, for its pacing, for its story, but I just absolutely love these kinds of animes, and today I'm going to be talking about Flowers of Evil, or in Japanese, Aku no Hana. This is an anime based off of a manga by Oshimi Shuzo. It is animated by the studio Zexes, and it is directed by Nagahama Hiroshi. Now, that's very important information because the first thing you need to know is mangaka Oshimi Shuzo. Oshimi Shuzo is not your average mangaka. He focuses on a variety of different genres. He writes family dramas, slice of life high school, coming of age stories. He writes pretty fun stuff. On the surface, they seem pretty harmless, but in reality, Oshimi Shuzo is known for some of the most psychologically torturous, some of the most challenging, some of the most uncomfortable manga writing, and mainly because he explores very deep, depraved, dark sides of the human psyche. And of course, his most popular manga, Flowers of Evil, is about guilt and shame and perversion and antisocial behavior. And then you also have his other very acclaimed works like Happiness. He made Inside Mari, which is about gender dysphoria, and also very well known Blood on the Tracks, which I believe is about a fucked up mother-son relationship. In fact, I do have the manga for Blood on the Tracks. I have the manga to Blood on the Tracks. As you can see, I haven't even opened it. I'm very excited to read it in my hand. So there we go, Blood on the Tracks. So Oshimi Shuzo is known for making fucked up shit that's gonna make your skin crawl without any hardcore violence and blood and gore, and with only human psychology. And that's what makes Oshimi Shuzo such a standout mangaka and someone who is incredibly misunderstood and also incredibly underrated. Now that, and paired with director Nagahama Hiroshi, usually I don't pay attention to who is the director of an anime because usually anime directors don't really actually direct, they just adapt the manga to the anime panel by panel, and then they don't really add anything special to the art style, to the directing, to the pacing. They just do it in the most conventional, boring, mainstream anime way possible. But things are different for Nagahama Hiroshi because he is also the director for Mushishi, which is one of my favorite animes of all times. And also, his directing is very interesting in Mushishi because while Mushishi, the manga in and of itself, is already kind of a slow-paced, episodic thing, but Nagahama Hiroshi has a cinematic sensibility to him, making a lot of Mushishi feel like an Ozu film. There's a certain quietness to Mushishi that makes it feel so raw and real. And then not too long ago, last year it came out, but the episode's probably made for a while already, Uzumaki's episode 1. The Uzumaki anime adaptation is a disaster, but episode 1 is animated really well, mostly because it is rotoscoped. And that's also directed by the same guy, so obviously this guy directs. And that's very important, because now we move on to Flowers of Evil, which is a whole season, not just one episode. 13 episodes of rotoscoped anime. And I cannot think of another anime that is entirely rotoscoped. Uzumaki was close, but obviously at some point they just gave up. And I can think of several anime scenes that use rotoscoping, but an anime entirely 100% rotoscoped, I can only think of Flowers of Evil. So every single shot, every single scene, every single frame in Flowers of Evil are actually filmed in real life with real actors, and then the animators take a screenshot from that film, and draw over it every single frame. Now that's dedication. And why? Why would you use rotoscope? Well, there are a lot of artistic reasons, but I think the most important thing is that rotoscope looks weird. And a lot of people hated this anime's art style because it looks weird, because people look just too realistic, yet at the same time they look anime. Their lips are a little undetailed. They have noses, but you can only see the nostrils. They move, but then the people in the background don't move. There's something really uncanny and off-kilter about the art style of Flowers of Evil. And a lot of people just hated it and decided to not watch it because of its art style. But let me just say that just because the art style isn't your average mainstream anime style doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, it's great because this uncanny, weird, off-kilter style perfectly matches the tone of the story. Flowers of Evil is a high school, coming-of-age, slice-of-life romance, except it's also an incredibly fucked up psychodrama. Or I wouldn't even say fucked up. I would say incredibly real and raw and uncomfortable psychodrama about the turmoil, about the inner demons of these three characters. Casca, who is a quiet, nerdy bookworm boy. You know, a lot of high school animes have these kinds of characters. Except this time, he's not just a quiet nerd who's actually really nice. He is really nice, too nice. He is perverted. He's incredibly insecure. He hates himself. And he sees himself as trash, which props him up for Nakamura, who is a red-haired girl who is basically a delinquent. She does not study at all. She curses at everyone. She clearly has issues, has antisocial issues. She wants to destroy society and the world, and she thinks everyone is trash. So Nakamura and Casca almost form a sadomasochistic relationship in the anime, where Nakamura would psychologically torture him and he would just take it. And may I remind you, this is middle school. So these characters are fucking stupid and they're pathetic, but they're just kids, so they don't know any better. Now, at the same time, Casca has a crush on another girl, Saiki, and Saiki is literally an angel. She's really nice, she's really clean and pure, and she's really innocent and naive. But again, that is to a fault because she is too naive, and even when things are clearly not right, she just accepts it. So we have these three characters, and they're almost like the modern day Shinji, Asuka, and Rei. I know it's a weird comparison, but the same male, female kind of combination, kind of psychologically torturing each other, is just so freaking real. Now, because it is rotoscope and because literally every single scene is filmed, Nagahama Hiroshi puts a lot of cinematic detail in this anime. Lots of wide shots and close-ups are deliberately used. Lots of interesting framing and composition. I love the shot where you see a road and then you see a mirror, a circular mirror. I don't know what those are called. And we see the characters inside the mirror and the road is empty, frame within frame. There are just a lot of very intentional use of editing. There's choppy editing. There are a lot of long takes, wide shots, still shots that just let the camera sit there. Again, that's something you would only see in an art house film, and to see it in an anime and rotoscoped is just surreal. And then we have the OP and the EDs. The OP is really simple. It's just white background and some text. And for an anime so deeply raw and challenging, I think an OP with nothing and also an ED with nothing is the most perfect way for the opening and the ending. And the OP is actually 4 different songs, and 3 of the 4 songs are songs sung in the perspective of the main 3 characters. And then the ED is black background, white text rolling up, and it's basically the theme of the anime. And it's, again, off-kiltered, weird, uncomfortable, challenging, painful, nothing fancy, nothing fun, and just the intention to artistry is just insane. Now, this anime is slow. There are a lot of scenes that are really, really long, and I'm really surprised because I read the manga, maybe the first few chapters before watching it, and I realized that the anime is even slower than the manga. Nagahama Hiroshi actually made each scene linger longer, and then he would add a lot of these shots, like inserts, he would add extra dialogue for some scenes, and that is a real fucking adaptation, man. That's real adaptation. Again, boring anime directors just take whatever's in the manga and adapt it panel by panel. But a real filmmaker sees the original material and changes it for his own accord, to his own taste. And you can really see that. So the pacing is even slower, even more torturous. There are so many uncomfortable moments where you just have to sit through it because it lingers on you. And there's not a lot of plot. Most of the scenes revolve around the 3 main characters, or maybe a couple more, maybe 5 characters. But because Oshimi Shuzo takes the same 3 characters and ground them into powder, torture them, put them through the ringer, you really see so much depth in these 3 characters. They really go through hell in this anime. And again, I just really appreciate how Oshimi Shuzo is able to write something so messed up without using or resorting to any extreme violence. So no crazy gore, no crazy violence, not a lot of, in fact, not at all, no sexual violence, but there's just something so deeply rotten about these 3 characters, which is just amazing. So yeah, a great writer doesn't need to add characters to make the plot interesting. A great writer only needs a few characters and explore every facet of them. Now, several highlights in the anime include the water bucket scene, which I think is at the end of episode 5 or 6, with the very choppy editing, multi-angle. I think 4 different camera angles were filming the same shot, and it just sort of like speed cuts through all of these angles again and again. It's just this shocking editing moment. The ending of episode 7, the classroom scene, where they vandalize the classroom, is easily one of the most powerful and moving moments in anime history, and I don't say that shit lightly. I'm gonna try my best not to spoil it, but I think when the characters are pushed to such a dark emotional point and they just go crazy, it's so cathartic, and then they start laughing and dancing. There's something so beautiful about it, but not beautiful in a righteous sunshine and rainbows way. It's beautiful, but it hurts, and it just explodes in full color. Fuck the ending sequence. Just fuck it. Just put text on it, slow motion, ink splashing, Nakamura laughing, and the moon. That's the last shot. Holy fuck. I was so crushed by this scene. I couldn't stop thinking about it for the entirety of the next day after I watched it. And then the ending to episode 10, where the 3 characters sort of like standing in the rain and yelling and screaming and crying. And that's when you realize that even Saiki, even though she's an innocent girl, she's also problematic, and also some of the most intense performances, both by the actor and the voice actor, sort of surface on this episode. And again, I just find it real impressive how Oshimi Shuzo really scraped the bottom of our skulls, exposing our most perverted and insecure thoughts. The thoughts that we have and we're too afraid to admit that we have these thoughts, Oshimi Shuzo uses his characters as a vessel to help us air these thoughts out. And I also love how this is essentially a corruption of a slice of life high school romance. Again, very stereotypical, goddess, innocent girl, quiet, nerdy boy, and then you have the villain, you have the antagonist, but it's so corrupted and rotten, and you just don't know who to love and who to hate and who to be scared of. Love is like a social disease here. The more Casca loves Saiki, the more he spirals out of control. Even though, characters, if they're in love, they hold hands, they talk, and happily ever after. But reality is so much more horrifying and just fucked than that. And I just love how Flowers of Evil showed that. Now, episode 13 is essentially just a huge teaser for part 2 of the anime, which never happened because part 1, this Flowers of Evil, 13 episodes, is such a huge failure and everyone hated it, and that's really sad. And yeah, it's a flaw, but I wouldn't really blame it on this anime. I think this anime is as great as it is. It is very powerful. Again, it is flawed, but it leaves such a strong aftertaste on me that I really have to give Flowers of Evil a strong 9 to a 10 out of 10. So, have you watched Aku no Hana, Flowers of Evil? Comments below, let me know. Subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.